All right, Shabbos, say good morning, good morning. Let us begin. So we are picking up in Mesillas Hashem today in Parak Yud Aleph in Mesillas Yesharim. So again, in the Hachzek Mesillas Yesharim, it is Tuesday, the 28th of Cheshvan, the 22nd of November, page 69. So we are picking up Rabosai. So the Ramchal says as follows. The Ramchal writes, he says, "V'hinei dvar hasheker hu choli leiv." So remember again, continuing here on our journey of interpersonal averos that sometimes are so prevalent and so persistent within our lives that we may not even be aware about their existence. So the Ramchal writes, sheker, falsehood, lying. V'hinei dvar hasheker hu choli ra. So lying ultimately again is a serious illness. And it's very common within people. Bu'ulam, madrigos yeshbo. Now we'll say again, when it comes to lying, dvar sheker, or falsehood, there's different levels that people transgress this particular prohibition. Yesh b'nei adam, his wording over here is so fascinating. Yesh b'nei adam, shu'manasam mameshua shakranas. There are some people, they mamish lie for a living. They lie for a living. Umnasam means like their trade. Their trade is to be false, is to lie. Now it's interesting in the footnotes of the Mishnah Berurah that I'm using. He writes over here, "Shenetiyasam l'shaker himamish kimunusam shows kimba b'kviyas." What does it mean when the Ramchal says? When the Ramchal says that lying ultimately again is like their umnus, is like their profession. Just like your profession is something hopefully that comes naturally to you, right? I develop a skill set, so I know how to do my profession. There are some people who, for them, lying becomes like their profession. In other words, they're so accustomed to it that it simply comes second nature. And these are people who mamish just deal in just explicit lies. Now we'll say, you ask yourself, well, why would a person be like that? Right? Why would a person just be a perpetual liar or someone who's so steeped in falsehoods that it literally just comes naturally to them? So there's a couple of reasons. Sometimes because they like to be popular. In other words, and it strikes up conversation. Or, and I think this is more often, that people lie because they want to be perceived as intelligent or smart. In other words, that I want to look good in the eyes of other people. And so again, I just say what I have to say in order to look good. And about these people, the Pasuk in Mishlei says, Toavas Hashem sifsei sheker. It is an abomination to Hashem when falsehood passes the lips. Va'omer sifsosechem dibru sheker, l'shonchem avla tega. Ukvar gazrudinim. So we'll say, it's interesting. Ukvar gazrudinim. What's the din? What's the judgment for such individuals, habitual liars? So the Gemara says, Ukvar gazrudinim chachamim zchron levracha, arba kitos ein makalim b'nei ashchina. There are four groups of people who in the afterlife are not zocha, are not privileged to be able to greet the Shechina, va'achas mehen kat shakranim. And one of these groups are the group of liars. The group of liars. And I will say, it is interesting how severe lying is looked at. You know, if you think about it, though, it makes a lot of sense. If there's one thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants of us, the one thing more than anything, it's to be genuine people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need me to be perfect. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need me to be great. All HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs from me is two things. Number one, to try, and number two, to be genuine. To be genuine, to be a genuine person requires a degree of personalistic honesty. A person who's steeped in lying can't be honest about anything, including themselves in life. Well, if you can't be honest about who and what you are, you can't be honest about yourself, then ultimately, again, in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's difficult to have any level of standing. That's how profound this is. V'yesh acherim. Now, there's another group of liars. Who is this other group? V'yesh acherim. Krovim lahem madrega. Now, they're close to the first category, but not as bad. Afa pishenim kimo mamish. V'em hamechazvim b'sipureim v'divreim. So we'll say this is what we'll call exaggerators. Exaggerators. Right? What do exaggerators do? V'hainu she'im umanasam bekach lalechas v'livdo sipurim umaisim asher lo nivru v'lo niyu. These individuals, ultimately, again, it's not their intention to go ahead and actively spread falsehood, right? It's not their intention. They don't go out of their way to say stories or maisim that mamish never occurred. Aval bevon l'saper dvar ma, but whenever they say something, ya'arvu bahem min hashkarim kimo sheyala al rucham. They'll mix in, sprinkle in a little falsehood. In other words, so as opposed to the first category where the person literally is lying for a living. In other words, that lying, sheker, becomes so intertwined with everything they say. This second category, the person won't go out of their way to lie, but when they do tell a story, they do tell information, often they'll just automatically mix in mix in information that's simply not true. And they get used to this. Ad sheshav lahem kimoteva, until it becomes like second nature. In other words, I will say, sometimes when a person lies, it requires a little bit of effort to keep the story straight, to keep the story consistent. Then a person becomes so good at it, that it just flows, right? In other words, like teva, it's like nature. I don't have to even think about it. It just comes. The hein habadoim asher efshar lahem l'divrei. And I will say, see, here's what's interesting. You see, in the first category, people, and again, we all know people like this, who unfortunately are just habitual liars. So you know that whenever they say something, what? Don't believe it. The second category is more complicated, because in the second category, they're not habitual liars. In other words, they just lie a lot and just kind of change certain details and just amplify certain things. So this is even more complicated, because here, I just don't know what to do with these person's words. Like, I know that I shouldn't wholesale discount it, because at the end of the day, there may be some truth, but I don't know what's truth and what's not truth. And this is so incredibly important, so incredibly difficult, because here, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with what this person is saying. So again, therefore, by default, all I can do is discount their words, right? In other words, if I can't believe you in totality, the only thing I could do is not believe you at all. Okay, and the Gemara says, you know what the punishment of the liar is? The ultimate punishment of the liar is that even when he speaks the truth, you still can't believe him. Right? In other words, a person has eroded their personal integrity to such a degree that even when they're mamish talking the truth, 1,000% truth, you just can't believe it. You just can't believe it. Shekvar hitbiu bahem hara azos. And I will say, now again, in the first category, it's not even a shak, because in the first category, I know the person's a liar, so it's fine. In other words, it's not fine, but I take it for what it is. I know that you are not a person of your word, so therefore, by definition, there's nothing to rely upon. The second category is so much more complicated, because this may be a person that at times is telling the truth, right? Is trying to go ahead and do something productive, but yet at the end of the day, because so often falsehood is mixed in, I can't take anything you say at face value. So the Gemara goes, I'm sorry, the Ramchal goes right there. Shlo yuchlu, let's say Stivrei Nikim and Akazim 12 p.m. Because we'll say, what's the problem? The problem is in category number 2, because the person becomes accustomed to falsehoods. So therefore, sometimes even by definition, it's impossible that something false doesn't get mixed in with what they're saying. Even when the person is trying to tell the truth, it's just possible that something false is mixed in. Humash shanavi mitztar va'omer lamdu lishonam daber sheker ha'avei nilu. V'yesh odacher. So we'll say it's category 3. Right? It's category 1, absolute liars. Category 2. Ultimately what? People who constantly mix in falsehood in every single thing. Category 3, so we'll say category 3 is a little bit better than the previous 2. These are people who are not habitual liars. But they don't make an effort to distance themselves from falsehood. Interesting, no? So they don't make an effort to distance themselves. So in this third category, so ultimately the individual is not a habitual liar, but at the end of the day, they don't distance themselves from falsehood. Meaning what? That if and when the opportunity to lie comes about, if the opportunity comes, yomru, they'll lie. Upamim rabos yomru derechok ukiyose bazeh below kavana ra. They will say, what does this mean? So this is the kind of person who is not an active liar, not a habitual liar, and not even looking to lie. But if an opportunity for some reason comes about to lie, often they'll seize it. Now I will say, now why is it? What does that mean? When would they seize it? See, he says, interesting, derech schok o kiyotze bazeh below kavana. Often they'll go ahead and they'll do it as a matter of jest, right? Kind of like light conversation between friends and without intention. So I will say, so this is interesting. In other words, in this third category, see, as opposed to categories 1 and 2, where a person may often be lying, even for actively deceptive purposes, category number 3, there's no deception involved. So this is a person who will just make stuff up just for the sake of conversation, just for the sake of joking around with friends. In other words, the problem with category 3 is a person who doesn't avoid sheker. He doesn't avoid sheker. He's okay dealing in sheker. Granted, again, it seems to be that it's in a way what he calls derech schok, joking around. But he's not distancing himself from that midah of sheker, from that midah of falsehood. V'amnam, hachacham hodianu, shekol zeh derech hefech rasan habari baruch hu midas chasida. Shabbos say, so again, obviously out of the 3 categories, category 3 is the least severe. The problem with category 3 is what? Once I'm allowing myself to go ahead and dabble in sheker, even recreationally, right? Even recreationally, when I'm drinking around my friends, we'll say, we know what inevitably happens. What inevitably happens? You graduate to categories 2 and chas v'shalom category 1. Because what the Ramchal is saying is, if I allow myself to dabble in a particular midah, there is no question that over time, my dabbling is going to grow into a greater habit. The only way, and I will say this is the whole chap of Nikios, the only way to stay free and clear of certain things is to mamish, repudiate. I don't do this. This is not something I engage in. And then Ramchal goes on, he says, to dabble in sheker, even recreationally, ultimately is against the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Masha Kasuv, Devar Sheker Yisnat Tzadik. Literally again, a word of falsehood is despised by the tzaddik. Despised. V'hu Masha Ba'alav Azhara Midvar Sheker Tirchak. As the Torah itself says. The Torah itself says, distance yourself from sheker. Distance yourself from falsehood. V'tira, Shelo Amar Misheker Tishamer. The pasuk doesn't say, be careful from sheker. Ela Midvar Sheker Tirchak. It says, distance yourself from sheker. In other words, it's not enough not to lie. And it's not enough even to go ahead and it's not enough to go ahead and be careful about lying. You have to distance yourself. Midvar sheker tirchak. Tirchak also means you put something far away from you so that it is out of reach. Distance yourself as much as you can. Run away from it. Ukvar ne'emar sheiris Yisrael lo yasu avlo v'lo yidaber kazav v'lo yimtza b'fiyam loshon tarmis. So we'll say, okay, so I think we stop over here. So I'll check. So we'll say we'll stop over here for today. Again, we're not finished yet with Emes. Now, again, what we haven't seen, interestingly enough, is, so what's so bad about sheker? In other words, intuitively, I know that sheker is bad. I know that it's bad. What we're going to see in tomorrow's Shir will say is, part of the reason why it's bad is obviously because when a person is a shakran, when a person lies, ultimately they have an inability to forge any meaningful relationship. But the what we're also going to see is that sheker itself is the very antithesis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we'll stop here for today. Me'at Hashem continue tomorrow. Shkoyach.